Hi everybody, welcome to my first Last Epoch build guide for my Erasing Stride Mana Stacker Void Knight. This build uses the new 200x World Splitter, and it's honestly really fun. You have massive bonks that blow up the whole screen. Let me show you a quick monolith run, and then we go into some details about the build. But yeah, this build, basically the idea is you stack a lot of mana to be able to cast a lot of Erasing Strike, and then you use certain interactions between your Erasing Strike and your passive tree to give you the ability to endlessly sustain your mana. If you take a look at my mana bar down there, my mana is constantly going to be dropping into negative and then jumping back up to, for me right now it's 160-ish. But yeah, this basically just happens because of certain synergies in the passive tree that I will get to later. And yeah, as you can see, the area is absolutely incredible. You just sort of blow up the whole screen, things die on the edge of the screen and behind you, and yeah, it's basically almost a range build with how much area we have and how much screen clear you get. Like if you take a look at these guys up here, they will just die, despite me being very far away. And yeah, it's just a very good build. My gear on this character right now is super bad. I basically only have the mandatory axe for this version of the build, and my other gear is terrible. I believe that this build is going to be able to scale very high when it comes to corruption and also to boss speed killing. But yeah, that's the monolith. As you can see, super good clear. Let's talk about some more details. I made two build planners. One is the beginning build planner, because you can cycle start this build. I will go over this very quickly. Essentially, your skills. This is your Erasing Strike. You pick up the crit chance. You pick up Essence of the End. This is bread and butter. Important. Most important note. You then pick up some damage here. You pick up the additional echoes and you remove the cooldown of Erasing Strike. You then pick up this for a good more damage multiplier. And yeah, then you just fill out the rest, like Erasure of the Living and Implement of Destruction. Why this is your bread and butter, I will get to in a little bit. Rife. Rife sustains you some mana at the start when you cannot go into the infinite mana loop yet. You basically rush down to double slash, pick up all the attack speed, pick up Iron Reach and Challenge for some quality of life, and then you basically just max out the right side as shown here, and then you have a few points left that you can spend wherever you want. I decided to go into this part to just give Rife some more damage for leveling and early monoliths. Then Healing Hands. This is your movement ability in the early game. Very good. You basically go up here and turn it into a movement scale by getting Rahi's Chariot. And Sunshroud gives you immunity while you dash. This is very good for dodging certain abilities of bosses. For example, the Lagoon Beam you can dash through without taking damage. Very helpful. You then go down into Searing Light, Purity of Thought. You max out Blessed Parish to reduce your mana cost of Healing Hands to 0. Then you go into the bottom right to turn it into a melee hit, and the rest of the points I decided to spend on Halted Scourge and Turn Undead to give it some more defensive capabilities. Your next ability is going to be Anomaly. You pick up Time Lock, Immediacy, and Void Touch to turn your Anomaly into a on-demand stun. You then pick up pretty much the whole right side, prioritizing Time Bubble duration, cooldown reduction, and yeah, all the 1-point nodes over here. You pick up some leech up here, some leech effect, some crit chance. Very simple. Let's talk about passives quickly. Very basic Sentinel setup, just 20 points to get to the mana sustain from Riving. 5 points into Paladin for Healing Hands, And then in Void Knight, you just get the defense, get all the flat damage, get some leech, crit multi. You pick up these very, very efficient damage increase nodes. You max out the health one, you max out this echo node, put 5 points into this one to get to the last one here for the 10% chance. And for the 10% increased mana cost. Very important, actually. And then, last but most certainly not least, okay, listen here. This is the most important node on the whole tree for you. You pick up Essence of the Void, don't care about that. But Void Well. While you have 3 or more Void Essence, if you drop below 0 mana, you consume 1 Void Essence to set your mana to 30% of your maximum mana pool. This is the reason why this build works. Basically, if you crit something with your Erasing Strike, because of Essence of the End, you get a Void Essence. And then, once you drop into negative mana with your Erasing Strike, you will consume a Void Essence to get you back to 30% mana. This is why stacking mana is really good for this build, because if you have a lot of mana, like let's say you have 1000 mana, you will get 300 mana back from this, enabling you to basically permanently spam your Erasing Strike, which will continuously crit, generate Void Essences, and then after 3 seconds, once you drop into negative mana, it's gonna reset the loop back to 300 mana, so you can just keep spamming your Erasing Strike. So yeah, this is super important, bread and butter. Remember this. If you wonder why the build doesn't work, it is probably because you don't have a point in Void Well. Then you go into Forge Guard, 5 points into Weapon Master for the more multiplier with maces. For the early game build, I only played with maces. Later on you're going to use an X obviously, but yeah, this is good for early. Then you just pick up health, even more health, and then 5 points into Crushing Blows. More damage per 1 mana cost, 0.5%, very good. Your Erasing Strike costs quite a lot of mana, so this is a very good multiplier. Once you get World Splitter, it's going to be even more ridiculous, but we'll get to that in the endgame build. Alright, when it comes to gearing, pick up mana wherever you can. Levels to Erasing Strike are really good. If you find a Shadow Beacon, this is going to be your best in slot until you get the Axe. If you find Dark Stride, also very good to use. Other than that, this build doesn't have any mandatory uniques until you get your World Splitter. So yeah, just get defenses, get mana wherever you can, get some crit chance maybe, you know, the basic stuff. For the idols, mostly just defensive options. If you find increased echo damage on Ornate idols, use 2 of those. If not, opt into defenses, get your resistances and health and whatever you need. Blessings, crit multi, mana, resistance, and more defense stuff. Crit multi and mana are the most important ones for your offensive idol, for your offensive blessings. All the other ones you can dedicate to defense. Alright, that is the early game build. Eventually, you're gonna reach Empowered Monoliths and go into your first monolith, and that should be the Black Sun. This is where you will get your axe, your World Splitter. The Harbinger of this timeline is gonna have a chance to drop you the World Splitter. It took me 3 tries, so maybe you're luckier than me. But yeah, once you have your World Splitter, this is when you will change your build to the endgame version. Let's talk about the World Splitter first. This is our weapon of choice for multiple reasons. Reason number 1, it looks really cool. No, okay, reason number 1. This is the reason why we do the whole mana stacking thing. It basically gives you a lot of mana scaling. It gives you a lot of area, it gives you a lot of crit chance, flat crit chance, very important, and it gives you a lot of melee multi, and it has a big 30 to 52% increased mana roll. Let's talk about the changes to the skills now, and then the whole synergy between the skills and World Splitter is going to make a lot more sense. Starting with Erasing Strike. We remove points from Implements of Destruction. We removed some points from Erasure of the Living to put into Hastened Cataclysm. This is very important. This is a node that you have to experiment with. Depending on how much mana you have, this node can feel kinda bad if you put 3 points into it. I'm currently sitting at 540 mana, and the node feels pretty good maxed out. But I would assume if you're at like 400 or even 300, you probably want to put a few less points into this. This is just something you have to kind of feel out for yourself. Basically, what this node does, we don't care about the cooldown recovery, we care about the mana cost. Because the 45 mana cost for Erasing Strike synergizes with World Splitter. We get 2% increased area per 1 mana cost. My Erasing Strike currently costs 83 mana, giving me 166% increased area for my Erasing Strike. And it also gives you flat crit chance per 1 mana cost. With a max roll, I got lucky and got a max roll on this stat. I am currently getting 41% flat crit chance from this weapon for my Erasing Strike. This is insane. Because with the 9% from the tree and the 5% baseline, you basically have to invest almost nothing into crit chance on your gear to cap out your crit chance. And again, capping out your crit chance is going to enable you to generate Void Essence on every single Erasing Strike, even against bosses, to sustain your infinite mana loop. Now it all makes sense probably. Very good synergy. But there are some more changes to the skills. Volatile Reversal and Anomaly did not change at all, but I removed Rife and Healing Hands to instead go for Void Cleave and Abyssal Echoes. Why did I do that? Well, the World Splitter is an axe, so it allows you to use Void Cleave. This is an insane damage increase to the build. The reasons for that are the following. Number 1, Void Cleave adds Void Res Shred, Armor Shred with increased Armor Shred effect, and it casts Abyssal Echoes. You can also turn it into a mobility skill down here, so you have some mobility on the build. And yeah, it basically is used for mobility and for using Abyssal Echoes and for shredding some resistance to have your Erasing Strike hit harder. What does Abyssal Echoes do for the build? Well, the following. Number 1, it blinds enemies, which is a bit of a defensive layer, very nice. It also gives you the buff Embrace the Darkness. This gives you Nether Coding, which I can show you. It actually works with Void Cleave. It says if you directly use Abyssal Echoes, but as you can see, I use my Void Cleave here, and I get Nether Coding. Nether Coding gives you 20% more damage against blinded enemies. Again, we blind enemies, so we just have 20% more damage to the enemies we blind. Very, very good. We then also get more armor resistance shred, which is nice, you know, armor resistance shred, more hit damage for Erasing Strike. And down here we get slow and Void Supremacy, which just increases the damage of our next Erasing Strike by 80%. Very, very strong, very good. Well, that's the changes to the skills here. Let's look at the passives. Nothing really changed here. I am using a Rife on my bar in case my loop breaks. Once you reach a certain amount of mana, which I believe to be 650 to 700-ish, you will probably never have to use Rife again, because the mana loop sustain is gonna be basically infinite. But right now there's still occasional situations if I don't crit where on single target I cannot sustain the loop. That's why I use Rife to give me the mana sustain from this node. Once you reach the point where you do not have to use Rife at all to get mana, you can remove these points and put them into the Vitality or this, whatever you want. But for now, we have to use this. In the Void Knight section, nothing changed. Still the same. Remember Void Well, most important. You remove 5 points from Paladin because we don't use healing hands anymore. And Forge Guard, you remove 5 points from Weapon Master and put them into something else instead, like Battle Hardened. The reason for that is simply that we are not using a mace anymore, so getting more damage with a mace isn't needed, and the X1 gives you bleed chance, which we do not need at all. Now, another funny thing that happens once you put points into this over here, Haste and Cataclysm, is that your mana cost suddenly gets very high. As I said, it's 83. And we have the node here that gives you 0.5% more damage per 1 mana cost. Suddenly, this is a 41% more damage multiplier. So yeah, insanely strong. Now, when it comes to the optimal gear, I'm still experimenting, but this is where I'm landing on at the moment. Mana on the helm, obviously. Orion's Eye with 1 LP and flat mana would be probably Biss. Titan Heart with percent mana and levels to Racing Strike would be probably Biss. There could be other options here. I believe that No Potent could be very strong as a very defensive option. And potentially Urzel's Pride could be used as well, because it has some flat mana with 3 or 4 LP. I can see this being used, but I think Titan Heart is going to be the most consistent choice here. Gives you a lot of health, gives you 15% less damage taken with the two-handed weapon. Just a very good piece. So yeah, if you get it with good LP, definitely very usable. Then we have strength and crit chance on the rings. Strength gives you more damage, but also more armor. For the belt, I am pretty sure that the Biss one is probably going to be Shattered Chains with 2 LP going into health. I will just change that in the planner right now, actually, because I think this is going to be the best option. So yeah, you would kind of want to have something like this. Shattered Chains with 2 health LP. If you use Shattered Chains, you're also locked into 1 Siphon of Anguish to give you the chance for Doom. Shattered Chains gives you 5% more melee damage per stack of Doom, and Siphon of Anguish gives you a chance to apply Doom on hit. Again, LP for strength and crit. For the gloves, flat mana and attack speed and more health is probably going to be your best option. For your boots, the most offensive one is Sudaran Steps. For the massive 105% melee crit damage multi, there are 2 other options you could do here. One is Dark Stride for the just flat void damage and general like movement speed and, you know, just a bit of a more balanced option. And the other one, which is a very defensive option, is Inevitable, I think it's called. The Inevitable. This gives you less damage taken while using a Racing Strike, stun immunity while Racing Striking, lots of movement speed, and just some good defensive stats. I think this could be best in slot for very high corruption pushing. Nothing changed in the blessings, and the idol is still gonna be flat mana and crit multi. When it comes to the idols, nothing changed either. Get defensive stuff and echo damage. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. For helmet, I mean, I could see this one being really good, Seed of Echidrosil. If you get it with some decent LP, I think this can be really good. But we would have to do some testing how it works with the infinite mana sustain loop if you take damage. But yeah, I think this could potentially be really good, but this needs testing. Alright, I think that's everything covered. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And if there are any big updates to the build, I will update the planner. And if a lot of stuff changes, I might do an update video. But I think that's about it. Thanks for watching and have fun with the build and with the new cycle. See you.